Well, it's lovely to be here in sunny Eastbourne. As Tim said, I'm from Hastings, although I have lived away from Hastings for many years. And for a number of those years, I was living in Scotland and married. But it's about late 30s, when I was in my late 30s, that my marriage broke up. I was with the same man for about 22 years. And I sort of thought that at the end of all that, I would have a chance to find another man, find what I wanted in my life, and find who I wanted in my bed. In fact, that didn't really happen, not for about 4 years. Now, some women like other women. They like the softness, they like the familiarity, and there's something very comforting, I've been told, with being with another woman. But I'm not into that. I like men. I like their hardness. I like their hairiness. And I like the smell of men, which is so different to a woman. We'd had fumbly teenage sex and slightly less fumbly married sex. Sometimes quite good sex. But as time went on, and there was pregnancy and breastfeeding and quite often another small person in our bed, our lives changed. And we came to sort of an unspoken agreement that he would work away and I would pick him up at the airport on a Friday, take him back to the airport on a Sunday morning, which meant that we only had Saturday together, which meant Saturday was sex night. But that was only if we could get the kids to bed and only if they got to sleep, which obviously didn't always happen. I don't know about you, but we got into a habit when making love. You know, he knew what I liked, I knew what he liked. And it was a bit like sort of sex by numbers, and about as satisfying as painting by numbers. Done, finished, temporary beauty. No imagination, no savouring the moment, just making the next move, waiting for the reaction. Swap, sleep. After a while, we got into a different routine. He was now working at home, or near home, and he was home during the week. So I took the opportunity to join the theatre group that I'd been with previously, before the children, and that meant I was out 2 or 3 nights a week rehearsing, and we'd have a performance every couple of months. And for me, that was magic. That was my life. That's all I needed, my children and the theatre. I didn't need sex, and I didn't want it. When we divorced, I cut my hair, I devoted myself to our 3 beautiful sons, and I worked on building up my self-esteem again. There were guys around, quite a lot of guys actually, who wanted to get into my knickers. I was still quite thin, quite prettyish, but I didn't really want them around, and it was 4 years before I started spending time with a very special man. My boys used to go to their father 3 times a week, which meant we had 3 times a week where we could just play. And for us, for me maybe more than him, it was like the joy of sex, the reality of the book. And it was something that I could never have hoped to achieve with my husband, ex-husband by then. It was the freedom to discover his body, my body. No embarrassment, ever. Lots of laughter, dirty, flirty fun. And it was an education and a revelation. And for 3 years, we had Christmas every day. And then I was serially monogamous for about 2 or 3 years in each relationship. I just couldn't seem to get any further than that sort of 2-3 year mark. There were 2 lovely men who really wanted to marry me, but it wasn't going to work for me. The one who was more difficult to walk away from was the guy who said, let's move to Canada. We'll both sell our houses, we'll go and live in the farmhouse, I'll work with my brother, and the boys will love it. The life in Canada is wonderful. Can we just do this? A new start. let's get to Canada. God, that was tempting and exciting. But actually I couldn't take my boys away from their father. That really wasn't going to work for me at all. So my beautiful Canadian man fell by the wayside. By the time I was 50, I had lots of wonderful partners, love aplenty, sex on tap. But in the small Scottish village where we were living, there weren't many attractive available men. There were the ex-husbands of my friends, but I wasn't going to go there. So internet dating seemed like a viable option. Lover 69 didn't really impress me, even though I had a few dates with him and he was a nice bloke, but he didn't live up to his name. Not that I ever found out, but yeah. Somebody nice to have some time with, but obviously not the man for me. Just You for Me. Again, strange name. Had a few strange names actually once I was internet dating. These men seemed to think these names would catch our attention. It didn't. Again, he was a nice man. Had a few dates with him, but he didn't smell right. So that was gone. There was the beautiful man, the one with the blonde curls. And I fantasised about him a lot. I thought about that first cup of coffee together, and it was intoxicating, the thought of where that was going to lead. It was very exciting at that time, and I just kept picturing the blonde man that I was going to see. Didn't work because his photographs were about 20 years out of date. And in person, he was less scintillating, less charming, and far less amusing than he'd been on the phone. So generally, internet dating was a disappointment for me. I have a very vivid imagination, and I think the stories that I made up about these men, that they were rarely able to come up to that level. I probably did miss a couple of good ones, but if I didn't get an immediate click, then they were toast. My last partner was the exception. He recognised my online profile from the girl that he'd been to school with. And we hadn't seen each other since we were 11 years old. So that was like 40 years. Hadn't seen each other. But he recognised me. I was the girl that he chased with worms. I was the girl whose pigtails he pulled. I was the girl who played football with his mates, but ignored him. And I was one of the cool kids. We clicked. It was serious clicking in my part, but not so much on his, and that's what I later realised. After the initial fun and the fantasies and the conquest, he was happy to just walk away. But we did have 3 years, and it was 3 years of a strong connection. I felt alive. I felt a wantonness that surprised me and delighted him. It was passion, unquenchable, never before matched. In those last days, we realised that even though we loved each other and we could see a future sometime ahead, that this wasn't the right time to be doing it. So we made a pact that in 5 years' time, on his 63rd birthday, if we were both single, we'd get together and we'd happily walk into the sunset and live happily ever after. But that was 5 years' time. So I was back on the internet again. Now, friends in the know told me to reduce my online age. By then, I was less pretty, was less thin. My confidence had really taken a battering, but I still had plenty of interest from all sorts of guys. There was the younger man who sadly didn't realise that I was probably twice his age, and I was older than his mother, so that wasn't going to go anywhere. There was the older guy, lovely man, did spend some weeks together. He was very kind, but he wanted to look after me. He wanted to keep me safe, and that felt very claustrophobic. He wanted me to move into his lovely seaside bungalow, and he was going to teach me how to play various card games. And he wanted to teach me how to play golf and to give up all these ideas of foreign travel, as he put it, and wanted us to grow old together. I was like, no, no, not me. There was a lovely man that I met, and we sort of met on a spiritual level. We both had a similar interest in spirituality, and we talked a lot on the phone and Skype, you know, when you're looking at each other and you see this bit. It was good, really good conversations, and again I thought, wow, this is going to be the one. And he came to stay for a weekend. Probably misjudged that one, but anyway, that's what I did. His intellect was surprising, and I found him very enlightening, and his stories enthralled me. I just wanted more. But physically, his body was more like Buddha than his spiritual body. And his interest in sex, well, just didn't seem to be there. But I have heard that really intelligent men are the ones who require no sex at all. Anyone know that one? That was my experience anyway. Then there was the guy who had the big, I can't remember what they were called now, motorhome, caravan type thing. It was a Winnebago. Yeah, sorry about that. So you're jumping ahead of me here. Winnebago, that's the word. You'd have loved to have heard that comment. But he was the complete opposite to my spiritual man. Now this one didn't want to go out for a meal. He wasn't interested in having a walk along the prom, going to listen to a band, going to the cinema. Didn't want any of that. He just wanted sex. And loads of it. All the time. Everywhere. And actually that was fun. It was something I hadn't really experienced, and it was strange and exciting and something new for me. But as we went further on, as the weeks passed and months passed, I guess he'd been building up to the fact that he needed to ask me a question, and he said it very gently and quietly, and he said, I'd like to take you to my club, and explained a little. Now I know a lot of people are excited by watching others making love or touching each other or whatever they do, and there is a whole voyeuristic thing, but for me, the thought of being in a room with all these people all just winding around each other and doing things, and me watching, or maybe even being persuaded to take part, it was just a turn off. But for him, it turned him off me. So 3 years ago, I decided to leave Hastings. I'd been back for a short while, and I thought that that's where I wanted to be in the world, back in Hastings, in my hometown. But I got to a point where nothing seemed to fit, and I wanted to get away. So I sold my house, and I went off to France, where I knew I had family, and Italy, where I had friends, and Spain, where I had other friends. And I started touring around, but there wasn't any particular plan. It was just a whim, really. And I was travelling for about 8-9 months. But every morning I thought, this is the day I'm going to meet the man, and I'm going to end up like some Shirley Valentine. In Portugal, I literally bumped into a man who I'd fancied when I lived in Scotland some 10 years previously. He was a guy who played at the folk club where I used to sing, and sometimes we were together, singing, playing. I didn't know he ever fancied me, and he didn't know that I fancied him. And there we were in Portugal, literally in the same cafe. After I moved down south, he'd bought a house over in Portugal, and he was playing all the local hotels and had a whole life out there. I was in Portugal about a month, and after a few weeks we realised that actually we seemed to fit, things were right between us, and he asked me to move into his lovely Portuguese villa and stay, have a life together. And I did consider it, but I said, no, I can't move in with you. I don't know you well enough, and I'm not sure that that's what I want. And then he suggested the apartment, which was round the corner. And he said, it's only small, but you'll be at my place anyway, and you can use my swimming pool at any time. Of course, that was quite attractive, the thought of a pool, but not really enough. And I think the thought of the pool was probably more attractive than him by the time it came to it. And I said no, and packed up all my stuff, rucksack back on, and thought about going home. And I went via the Netherlands, and I went through, Belgium, Cyprus, back to France, Spain again. But I was ever vigilant, and I was confident that a special man was waiting for me. Didn't happen. Back in Hastings, back on the internet again. Now this time I quoted my real age. My hair no longer coloured, my tummy no longer hidden, and the length of my life in full view. I did a 1 month trial with a new internet dating group. There were 57 men who I looked at. 19 of them I was quite interested in, and 31 men looked at my profile. 8 were interested in me. But the number of men who liked me, 0. That's it, not one. Not one man who wanted to meet me, who I wanted to meet. Now, I'm not looking for Mr. Super Handsome, but he'd need a great smile, and eyes that show his soul, an intellect to keep me engaged, and shared humour, of course, and a passion. Don't mind what it is, as long as a man's got a passion, that keeps my interest. Doesn't have to be wealthy. I don't need a man who's wealthy, but I don't want a man who's financially dependent on me, because I've been there and I've done that, and it doesn't work. And it would help if he hasn't got too many exes to support. But if he does, we'll cope. But the 63rd birthday came around. And on that 63rd birthday, I spent the day stopping myself from picking up the phone, sending a text, getting on WhatsApp, maybe a messenger message. It was really hard because I wanted to contact him. I wanted to see him. I wanted to know if what we'd had was still real. But I wanted it to come from him. I wanted him to be the one to remember, to get in touch with me. And that night, I went to bed feeling quite sad, I suppose. But the next day, the day after his birthday, he rang and he said, we need to talk. So we did. We went out, we had a fantastic meal, went to see a band, listened to the music, laughed and talked. And actually it felt like it hadn't been 5 years at all. It felt like, yeah, this is us. We're still here. We're in the same place. And this is exactly what we want. He walked me home. I didn't invite him in. I didn't think that was right after 5 years. But that goodnight kiss, it just showed the sweetness and the promise of what might happen next time we met. So, as he left me, he said, I'll ring you in a couple of days. I really want to see you again. And that was great. That's what I wanted as well. So the couple of days went. And then a couple more days. And then a few more days. He did ring, but by the time he rang, and he said, oh, I've been really busy. When are you free? Well, by then, it was like, no, hang on a minute. You told me you were going to ring in 2 days. And you've let me down. You didn't even stick to that one promise. And I thought, I can't put myself through this again. That lack of respect, the lack of thought was too much. So I was really sad and sort of wistful that he couldn't keep his word. But I wasn't going to do that again. But now I'm scared. Even if I do meet this wonder of a man, will I really want to invite him into my bed? At what point do I explain that being on my knees for even a short period of time will aggravate my arthritis? That the grip of my right hand isn't as good as it used to be, and my left is even worse? And what about if we shower together and he wants me up against the wall with my legs wound around his waist? Will he be horribly disappointed that I can't have that sort of fun anymore? And could I suggest a good firm table that I could lean over, and that would take the weight that my knees won't manage? Years ago, I'd lie wrapped in my lover's arms, breath in breath. No obvious start and finish between my body and his. And we'd lie there together all night. And we'd wake in the morning in that same position before stretching and smiling. How could I explain that I no longer enjoy being breathed on? By the way, that contraption on the bedside table, that's my CPAP machine, and that's connected to a mask that I wear every night to keep me breathing. Otherwise, there's a chance of me having a heart attack or a stroke. So what do I do now? Well, what do other women do? We may be over 60, but we've still got so much love to give, and we've still got an appetite for good sex. We've got paid work, voluntary work, books to read, films to see. We might have children. Some of us have got grandchildren. I have. And they do occupy our time. We've got tasteful, spacious homes. We may have more time than previously. And mostly, we know what we want out of life. Do we need a man in our lives? And how do we meet that one man who does it for us? Do we have to leave the house to find him? Can't we just fall in love with the postman? Or maybe that guy who always comes with our Amazon deliveries? Life is meant to be shared. I'm lucky. I've got wonderful friends, male and female. We cook together. We eat together. We go to the cinema. We play in the woods. We listen to music and we dance. We always dance. Do we really need sex when we're 60 and single? I'm starting to think that maybe we don't. But then I feel sad. So maybe we do. What do you think?
Thank you very much.